Yeah, to piggyback on a couple of questions, will we ever achieve campaign finance reform? And in the larger picture, do you see, as I do, a growing gulf between the wealthy and the middle class, and the systemic disease that goes with that, and how do we solve it? Because the lobbyists and the money now that are put into campaigns feed that growing gap.
Well, I mean, just look at the past presidential elections. I think that that Bush's first campaign, he spent $250 million. His second campaign, I think he spent almost $500,000. $500 million. Now, Obama's first campaign, he spent $750 million, and now they're expected to spend over $1 billion. And that I don't see an end to it, and nobody's going to volunteer to take the matching, the government match, when the other person has access to that type of money. So that's going to have to maybe be something that's addressed in the Constitution as well. But I don't see politicians changing that. I really don't.
No.
I think that's people have to get upset to change it, because politicians will give you lip service, but I don't think they'll change it. And what was the second question?
Do you see what I see as a growing gap between a middle class who's downtrending and the wealthy, and what can we do to solve that? Because I think systemically many of our problems stem from that.
Well, one of the big things with the middle class is that their largest asset was their home, and now home values have fallen so much that that's been a major draw on the middle class. The wealthy had other assets that weren't their primary residence, and it's, when you keep giving these corporate tax breaks. Oh, so if you look at the top 400 earners in the United States that reported their taxes last year, the top 400 made $139 billion, and so that's like half a billion, 500 million a piece or 400 million a piece that they made. They pay 15% in income tax on average. Where everybody, I don't know anybody, does anybody here pay 15% in income tax? I certainly don't pay 15%. And so you have this policy that is geared towards, because I think there's an error in some logic that says that if you keep giving corporations and the wealthy tax breaks, they'll hire more people. And what we've seen in some studies is that when you keep giving corporations tax breaks, they keep paying higher dividends to their investors instead of hiring more people. And especially now, when there's such mistrust and uncertainty in the market, why would you hire new people right now if you're an employer? I don't know what's going to happen. And our company, we actually we grew by 100%. We had 25 employees last year. We had 50 employees this year. But we're in healthcare, and we're very certain of the market. If you're in another industry, I don't know what to say. I think that rift is only going to get wider.
Do you feel there's any environmental issues that need to be addressed?
As in what?
Global warming.
Yeah. So you can't. I want to quote somebody who probably is not popular here, but Huntsman, who's not popular even with his own party. But Huntsman said, if 90% of oncologists were all telling you that something can cause you cancer, wouldn't you listen to them? And 90% of scientists are all telling you that humans are causing global warming. Why don't you listen to them? And I think that's a nice analogy to listen to. And it's hard to control our own output when you have nations like China that really have no restrictions on output, and they're using fossil fuels like crazy. And so this has to be a multinational effort to reduce the output of that. And I think that it helps when we implement new technologies, whether that's solar, wind, nuclear, any of these things that can help generate energy without heating the planet up.
I have a bit of an issue with fracking.
Is that in the Battlestar Galactica type of?
No, fracking is when they go way below the earth and they break up the ground to release the natural gas, which
Okay.
we have more than anybody on Earth, and, but they put down there the most hideous chemicals that corrupt the groundwater and so on, and there seems to be absolutely no accountability for it and no enforcement, and it seems like just another, like the disaster in the Gulf with the oil problem, this is just a different disaster waiting to happen, and the huge mega companies, oil companies and so on, they're not going to have to account for themselves.
Yeah. I mean, it sounds bad, I don't know anything about it, so I'll
Oh,
look
it's
into
horrible.
it. But I think the only one that got the fracking joke was Ed, right? So,
In the same vein, tar sands,
yeah.
you know, coming from Canada.
That's Canada.
Do you have any perspective on that?
That's Canada.
Yeah, I don't know a lot about that either. All right, well, thanks. I'll take one more and then I gotta get going.
I came a little late, I apologize for that, so perhaps you already answered this question. If you did, just say I answered this question and I'll let somebody else download it to me. Clearly, you're in a mostly friendly audience, but
Yeah, mostly.
mostly. But I'm more interested in knowing how it is that you think you can beat Buck McKeon, as opposed to what your stands are on various issues. And I know that's probably not a short answer, but I think it's probably the most pertinent question could possibly be asked here.
Broad strokes of strategy.
Yeah, just because the man is, shockingly to me, and to probably everybody else in this room, immensely popular. Clearly, he's going to line up an awful lot of defense industry dollars to combat whoever runs against him. And so I'm curious, strategically, how you think it's possible. What compelled you to enter?
So I wouldn't have, if it was, I got a lot more important things to do in my life than running a race that I thought that I couldn't win in. So I hired people to look at the race in several different ways, and it was really hard before the redistricting was completely done because you really had no idea. You couldn't go precinct by precinct and look at histories and all of this. But the district is, were you here when I talked about how the district had changed after redistricting?
I wasn't, but
Okay.
I'm familiar with what happened with redistricting.
So it's less favorable to Buck than it had been in the past. So that's the first thing. The second thing is that this is the first time in history that people have always been upset with other people's congressmen, but this is the first time in history that people are so upset that a majority of people say, I want to fire my own congressman. It's always been, your guy is bad, but my guy's okay. And so if you see the more recent CNN polls, people are kind of upset with just, in 2008, you had a little swing toward the Democratic side. In 2010, you had a swing toward the Republican side. I think that 2012, you might see an anti-incumbency swing, and I'm, this is what people are telling me, that people are fed up with incumbents, and they're fed up with what recently happened over the debt negotiation.
Mm-hmm.
They're fed up that this brinkmanship led to a downgrade in our credit score by S&P, and what that may actually have any effect later on on your interest rates. And all of that stuff was done by career politicians, that people that won't compromise. And so that's going to be our main message. And in addition to the other things that are on my website, you can see I put together a professional team. So I'm not going to get into a race and have my wife do this, and Buck has his wife as his treasurer, I think, right? I'm not going to, get into he pays her, I think, $78,000 a year to be his treasurer. But I'm not going to get into a race and have my friend do this and my wife do that. I hired professional people. My main consultant they've done 500 campaigns. They have a 78% win record. They only do Democratic campaigns. I've hired a second group of consultants that do media that have done doctors before, because my main consultant told me that doctors' campaigns are so much different than any other campaign. You have to have somebody that's done a doctor's campaign before. And these guys did a doctor in Wisconsin who started out polling at 6% and ended up winning with 52%. And so you have to surround yourself with the right people. You have to be the right person yourself, but if you don't surround yourself with the right people, it's not going to make any difference. So we're taking a lot of advice, and And I think it's a winnable race, and I think it's a winnable district.
China seems to have a whole mountain of our debt. Any ideas on how to correct that, or is that a real long-term item?
Yeah, they have a lot of our debt. They don't have the most. I think that's been a misstatement a lot, that they hold the largest portion of our debt. But actually, I think the government holds the largest portion of our debt in the treasury bonds. But
Social Security.
Social Security is a debt
The Social Security holds part of the largest debt.
in bonds. It's. I think China's probably nervous enough as it is now. You know, looking at our economy and what's happening. And
But we renege on it.
yeah, right. It's, you know, what do you tell other countries that they can't invest in you? The government wants them to buy it. That's the whole point. They want them to buy it, and then they get out there and they complain that China owns most of our debt, but they're the ones that sold it to them. So I don't know what to say about that.